As we mark the end of year, many of us are thinking about resolutions. That might include reading more. If so, you'll want to pay close attention as Jeffrey Brown guides us through the best books of 2018.
And for our look at books, I'm joined by two distinguished literary voices. Ann Patchett, as many of our viewers know, is an author, novelist, and owner of the bookstore Parnassus. Her last novel, Commonwealth, was on many critics' lists for best books of the year in 2016. Her latest book is Nashville: Scenes from the New American South. And Carlos Lozada is the book critic for the Washington Post, who specializes in nonfiction. Welcome to both of you. And start off with a couple of your fiction choices.
Okay, I love year-end roundups because then I get to really think about what's stuck with me over the course of the year. My favorite book, hands down, this year is called Baby, You're Gonna Be Mine. It's a short story collection by Kevin Wilson. It's just wholly original, a little rough. Every story is unique. There are no weak sisters in the book. Every single story is a winner. I love this book. I hope it just takes the world by storm. A very close second for me, favorite, The Overstory by Richard Powers. You could really say every Richard Powers book is a masterpiece, but this one is really important. It's a giant novel about trees and the people who work to save them, but every single one of his narrators has an amazing story about an amazing tree, and then finally all of those parts come together. It's a giant, engrossing novel. I loved it.
And I know you're a big reader. Do many books stay with you throughout the year?
No, and it's really odd because I can read a book that I love and then I'll forget about it. And then another book that I wasn't so sure about, 6 months later, if I'm still thinking about it, I'll know that that's a book I really loved.
Okay, Carlos, you got a couple of nonfiction books, especially topical books, huh?
Yes. First is The Line Becomes a River by Francisco Cantu. He's a young writer who studied about borders and immigration in college and then wanted to see it for himself. So he becomes a Border Patrol agent working in the Southwest. His mother warned him against taking the job. She said the soul can buckle in a job like this. And his did. He ends up having a lot of nightmares. He's racked by guilt. And he is at the same time trying to discourage migrants from coming over by ransacking their supplies, while he's also trying to help some, advising them on the right time of the year, for instance, to try to do the crossing.
This is when I should say, I hope our viewers will remember, because I went into the desert with him to talk about the book, yeah.
Yes, I think, and you really get a sense of place with this book. What I like about it so much is that we're having all these big policy debates over immigration right now, and the dilemmas that Cantu faces are the dilemmas that the country is facing right now, but told just through the very honest, empathetic story of one person.
Okay.
Next up is Good and Mad by Rebecca Traister. Rebecca Traister is the columnist for New York Magazine and has written a history of female anger in politics, basically from the suffrage movement through the Me Too movement. It came out in the midst of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. It was sort of excruciatingly topical at the time. And she writes how men are often praised and lionized for their anger, while female anger is dismissed as emotional or irrational, when in fact it can be a vital educational and organizing tool. One of the key things in this book is that Traister also turns the lens on herself and writes about how she used to suppress her own anger in her writing. She's not doing that anymore. This is a book that embodies its own argument.
All right, Ann, where do you want to take us? Do you want to stay with fiction?
I can really follow up on that. I've got a great novel about female anger, and that's Circe by Madeline Miller. Her first book was Song of Achilles, which I had thought could not be topped, but she really does something even better with Circe. She goes back to Homer and is retelling these stories of classic mythology. Circe is the witch that Ulysses meets on his way back home in the Odyssey, and she turns his men into pigs. But that turns out to be just one tiny bit of her story. She is all-powerful and really grabs a hold of her own life. It's a fantastic book, educational, but also a ripping good read that'll keep you up at night. And then another book that I loved was called Early Work by Andrew Martin, which was a book that I stumbled on because I read a review of it in the Times and I thought it sounded so interesting. It's really dirty. It's a book about
how dirty is it, Ann?
Young graduate students who drink a lot, read a lot, have a lot of sex, and somehow it's just mesmerizing. I've given this book to a dozen people, and everybody says they stayed up all night. They loved it. Terrific book.
Okay, can you top that, Carlos?
This won't be as dirty, though now I want to be the 13th person that gets that book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Post-Truth by Neil McIntyre. So there have been many books on the fate of...
In our moment.
Yes,
right,
on the,
truth.
many books on the fate of truth in the American Republic. They all have funky names like Truth Decay or Gaslighting America. What I like about this book, which is more of a philosophical tour, is that he isn't just concerned about the fate of particular facts or truths, but he thinks what is really under assault here is the very method by which we ascertain truth or get to truth, in particular science. What is also helpful here is that he doesn't just stay at the level of the collective or sort of, as a society kind of arguments, but he really tries to look at what we can do as individuals to fight back against this current. And he says we need to question our own truths, our own certainties. We need to embrace doubt. And he says that's very hard to do, but it's a good message for this moment. Another book that I also think hits the moment in kind of an unusual way is called The List by Amy Siskind. This is a very weird book. It is a reflection of this exercise the author did at the beginning, right after the 2016 election. She began just compiling online a list of every weird, norm-breaking move made by the incoming Trump administration. The first week it was 9 items, then it was 18, then it was 26, and finally she's chronicling hundreds of items per week. And what is helpful here is that it's basically a compressed history of the Trump presidency. And you forget in every shock of the moment about the last shock of the moment that you've already forgotten about. So I hope she does volumes 2, 3, and 4, though this book's already 500 pages, so I'm not sure how she's going to do more in the next one.
All right, I think we might have time for one more pick apiece. Anne, you want to start?
Okay, I'm going to pick The Baltimore Book of the Dead by Marion Winnick, who wrote the terrific The Glenrock Book of the Dead. It doesn't seem logical, but it is the most life-affirming little book. They are tiny vignettes of people that she knows, has known who have died, and also famous people that we all know who have died. They're like little personal obituaries, and oddly, the collective effect is that it makes you see the joy and the beauty of life. A weirdly terrific holiday gift, The Baltimore Book of the Dead.
And that one, we should say, is nonfiction, clearly, right?
Yes.
Okay. Carlos, one more?
Kwame Anthony Appiah's The Lies That Bind about identity politics, another hugely controversial subject right now. It's basically a tour through the history and philosophy of identity politics. He is sort of skeptical of this trend to identity politics, and he feels that really he rejects essentialism, the notion that we have some kind of overriding force that defines us and puts us into one group. He thinks we're messier than that. And the fact that we're messy is actually what sets us free as individuals. It's a nice counterpoint to a lot of the identity writing, but in a way that's not judgmental and is actually quite enlightening.
A start on what I hope is good reading for many people for 2018. Carlos Lozada, Anne Patchett, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.